As I said, good morning and welcome to Name, Image, and Membership. When I first arrived here, I was going up in the elevator to get into my room. And in the Delano, there is a display of inspirational quotes, and I happened to notice it. And one of the quotes was, "We cannot be what we need to be if we remain what we are." And it struck me that's precisely what this session is all about, what we need to be, how our name impacts our image and impacts all of you. With that, I'm going to introduce Sam Atkinson, past president of CoSIDA and from Gallaudet College. Sam?
Thank you, Doug. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Name, Image, and Membership. This is an exciting time for CoSIDA in our history right now. I'd like to welcome Trip Durham from 2D Consulting.
Thank you.
Trip, good morning.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate the invitation. As I was on the elevator coming down this morning, I was thinking how cool it was that I now have something in common with Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley. You're asking, what is that?
Yeah, how so?
We all three are now tied to the connection that we've been on stage with a microphone, and I can say that I've played Vegas.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Trip, but thanks for being here.
And he's the one that really has owned this process over the last, 8 months, 12 months or so. And then directly to my left is David Haney with Bosack and Company. Bosack and Company, you know really well from an imaging and a branding standpoint. And they actually had a touch with 2 of the championships that you saw yesterday, both with the Avalanche and inside the College World Series with Ole Miss. So Bosack and Company has been part of this journey as well. So I think, Sam, it's a dynamic group to spend a little bit of time with this important group this morning.
Thanks, Trip. And 2 different paths that you're going to hear this morning about this process addresses our membership as an organization along with our name and our future. It's exciting paths that we're trying to follow here. Trip, what was your initial thoughts when CoSIDA approached you about being a part of this project?
I was thrilled. When Barb first teased me with the idea that maybe an invitation was coming, and then a couple of weeks later when Beau and Doug reached out, to be able to be part of what the new is going to be, to help dive and dig in, it's inspirational. If you've ever owned your own business, you know that you're driven by the collaborations. And to be part of the collaboration with this group, I'm getting cold chills just thinking about it.
Well, and sometimes before you move forward, you have to look backwards. And one thing that this whole process, we really wanted to make sure that we didn't ignore or change was also our history. You know, CoSIDA's been around for 65 years. There's a lot of strong traditions and award winners and different things that have happened since 1957. But even before that, CoSIDA was named something else as we were a part of the sports division of the ACPRA. And also along the way, there's been change before. We've seen change in CoSIDA as an organization through different logos. As you can see on the screen here, that's changed over time. And you know, as technology has changed from a typewriter to a computer, our logo changed as well. So, David, you know, your experience with working with different clients when they're talking about either a brand refresh or maybe a name change themselves, what do you guys see from that, and how do you guys handle that with your clients?
Well, Sam, the first thing we try to understand is where have they come from? What's the journey? And then where do they want to be? What's their aspiration going forward? What is it going to look like for them? How do they see themselves 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? And through all of that, we really have to build into a name and build into that image and that brand identity. Authenticity, Sam. It's got to be authentic to them. It's got to feel right for the organization. And certainly, in working with the group that's on the stage, we've learned that over a period of time. This last few months, that where that sweet spot is
right
for the organization.
And we all understand too, like, you know, even on our own campuses, our conference offices, change can be hard, no matter what type of change you face. And Trip, you have experience too of 2D consulting and working with clients, and how do you handle that change?
Yeah, you've got to be careful to the history. You have to be somewhat visionary for the future. And that visionary, that's a tricky slope, because what you say today may or may not hold up in 15, 20 years. So to David's point, you've got to look at every single widget. And Beau, I'm curious, because you're the one that I've said sort of owned this process. What was the inspiration for you to get into the process, and how much have you been looking at the history and to the future?
Yeah, so the history is so important, and honestly, where this really first started to take place was several years ago in the boardroom, pre-pandemic. We talked a lot about how we wanted to be a communications organization and not necessarily only an SID organization. Because we watch the trends, we watch what our members and our member institutions are doing, and they're evolving, and we have to evolve with them. So that's really where it began. Now, from there we developed the all-in membership, which I know everybody has been hearing about and knows about, and really this process is just the next step of that. And from there we started to bring in guys like Trip and David and Jennifer. And Jennifer, what did you see when we brought you in?
Yeah, for us, when we do one of these projects, and I know we did the salary survey a couple years ago with CoSIDA, so we're familiar with the organization and its membership. But it's really important for us to even take a step back and figure out, why is it that you want to do the project? What's out there that you're trying to learn more about? What are the goals for the project? We also listen for maybe what are the preconceived notions going into this, and we look to try to neutralize a lot of those things. We really didn't hear preconceived notions. We heard an openness and a willingness to explore the topic of our brand, the name, the period of time we're all in athletics, how things are changing in that regard. So for us, it was exciting, because you weren't looking to prove a theory. You were looking to really just hear what people thought. And for us, those are the most exciting projects.
As we can continue this conversation, a reminder, you can ask questions in our app along the way. We'll also have an opportunity to field questions at the end of this session as well. But going back to the timeline itself, we announced to the membership in April of 2021 that the board wanted to look at this strategic branding review. The organization hadn't done something like this in over 10 years. So when we first started, Doug Vance, myself, and Beau started to meet early on. We brought Kevin Trainer in, our third vice president, to get some initial feedbacks as we got things up and running. And then we wanted to get honest feedback from you, our membership. We wanted to get honest feedback of where are we going as a profession and an organization. And we also wanted to get honest feedback from key stakeholders who have high expectations of CoSIDA, and maybe others that had different experiences of CoSIDA. And Trip, you had the opportunity to speak with them. What was some of those conversations like?
Yeah, there's a component here that involves Jennifer with Athlete Viewpoint and myself, and it was an approach from two different sides. Mine was to talk to 30 key stakeholders, and there were a wide variety of questions for each of the four groups that were identified. I think group one was called allies and senior administrators. One was past leaders. There was some outside perspective. And then the fourth group was the creatives themselves. And that worked in complement with Athlete Viewpoint. If you'll remember, in the fourth quarter, thereabouts of 21, that's when a survey rolled out. And I'm sort of a geek for detail. I like to know what goes into the process. So Jen, one of my questions for you is that we're all surveyed out, right? Raise your hand if you enjoy taking surveys. Did you raise your hand?
I put it down.
Oh, okay, just checking.
You get to the verb. And
I thought we knew where we were headed.
There's an art, right, to creating a survey that keeps people engaged. And with this, Jen, being so important, what was your process in building the survey to get the feedback without boring people, to make sure that the stuff is really good?
Without boring people. Okay, the Cliff Notes version, because I can geek out on the data and all of that all day long. But really, it comes down to a couple of fundamental things. You have to know what type of research you're doing. Are you just looking at satisfaction right? That's the survey that you'll all get when you go home today. How was your stay? You know, it's the stars that you give your Uber driver as you're driving around Las Vegas or riding around Las Vegas. So there's satisfaction research, but then there's also opinion research. And that's really the lane that the majority of this survey was in, was the opinion research lane. And then from there, it really comes down to two things. It's question design. A lot of people think it's really easy to design high-quality surveys. And what we know is that it's really easy to get a lot of bad, useless data if you don't ask good questions and ask the right questions. So for us, everything lives and dies in the question design. And that's a very arduous process, as you all know, because we looked at those questions a million times.
The number of times we took one word to say, should it be this instead of this?
Mm-hmm.
But it makes such a big impact, though.
Totally agree.
Such a big impact. And then you get all of those questions, and you want to make sure you're going to get the data output that you're seeking, that the data is going to be clear. And then you take a lot of those questions and you leave them on the cutting room floor because it's too long, and it really comes down to trying to get as much information as possible for the client and balancing that for you all that are taking that in as few clicks as possible, meaning getting through the survey in a quick, seamless way so that it's going to deliver the results that are intended.
So Jen, after the survey launched, I'm sure you were tracking on it almost daily. What were the things that you were seeing about name, about concept? What were the things that you were seeing in the beginning, in the middle? Did some of the things hold up at the end? Take us through that.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people do the play-by-play on that, you know, blow by blow, what's the data saying? I actually try to take a step back for that. My initial focus is response rates and demographics. Are people responding to the survey in the volume that we need to make it a good result that has legitimacy? And then also, are we getting a good cross-section? This survey asked for input from a lot of different people, athletic directors, members, non-members. We really cast a wide net with this. So really, that's where my focus is, to try and make sure that if the response isn't there, we're doing things in the background to try and continue to drive those response rates. After that, I do peak a little bit, but I keep it to myself largely. But what we find is that usually the people that come in very quickly early on have very strong opinions, one way or the other. Definitely they have something to say, they want to be heard. It's the same with all of us when we respond to surveys, right? A lot of times if we've had a great experience or we've had a really negative experience, we go right in on the survey. But if things are just fine, you know, coasting along, then maybe we don't take the time until we have the time to give to something like that. So that's typically our approach. But over the arc of the results, it was pretty consistent with people's responses.
Right. Jennifer, I found it interesting that some of the feedback we got was, you know, talking about titles and talking about, you know, name recognition as far as athletic communication, sports information. It seemed like a wide variety of responses there, but we're also starting to see a new trend as far as how people are identifying themselves.
Yeah, going into this, we knew that the phrasing athletic communications, the word communications in particular, was becoming more and more important. So it was interesting to see how that played out, and you can see some of the numbers if you're a numbers geek like myself on the.
I think we all love numbers in this room. So
yeah, the stats piece, right? You know, one of the things that was really impactful that for me in the response was a lot of people, when they were asked about the relevance of CoSIDA, those response rates were very, very high and very strong. The group that rated that question the highest percentage, who had the greatest amount of feeling that CoSIDA was a necessary and relevant organization, athletic directors and conference commissioners. Mm-hmm. So that was a great vote of confidence for the organization, and I think also shares why the work that you all are doing is so important and so critical.
And going to that brand equity standpoint too, like I think a lot of us in this room hold CoSIDA in high esteem, but maybe externally, what we think people think of us is maybe not as positive as we hope it is.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because in my one-on-ones, what I like to do from a brand assessment standpoint is the first question out of the box always is, on a scale of 1 to 10, I know this is really subjective, but on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being just off the charts, what's the brand strength of CoSIDA? And from the outside perspective, the number was low. For the people that have been in the membership for 40 years, it was really high. So the average was maybe about a 4.5, so it was truly all over the map, which I think complements in a way the slide that you're seeing, but at the same time really gives you indication to say, well, if it's really misunderstood from the outside, do we need to get to a point to where it's better understood?
At the same time that Tripp and Jennifer were getting this data information for the board and for our strategic branding working group, we wanted to expand that to a more of an advisory group as far as identifying other people in the membership, leaders within our membership, and also prospective members. And Beau, you had a big hand in that as far as identifying those individuals that were a part of that advisory group. How did you walk us through that process as far as identifying those individuals? And really, those meetings gave us honest and blunt feedback from individuals that we hold in high esteem there.
Yeah, honestly, it was one of the most fun parts of it. Was just like Tripp mentioned earlier with the interviews he did, and with the surveying we did. We got great cooperation from NACTA. They helped us reach the athletic directors to be able to get that information. We went out and we very manually looked up people that would be prospective, creative type members, and we sent it to about 2,000 people there. And then when we went to form this working group, we wanted to have that same type of representation. So veteran members, we had some younger members, divisional leaders. Honestly, it was not hard to find people who cared enough about CoSIDA to want to be part of this. We had representatives from our corporate partners, from the NCAA national office. It was a wide range of people, and they really wanted to be part of it. And then when we would get together, there was no shortage of opinions.
Right.
We would get, we would spend an hour, and by the end, we'd be ready to go another hour. But the thing that really energized us time and time again is how energized the people on the calls were, and they had opinions for sure.
And I think some of the data that we received from Jennifer's work was, from our membership, there was a mandate to lead, and I'll take that from Kevin Trainer, who used that in one of our board meetings, but there was a mandate to lead as an organization, as the leaders of this organization from the membership. And there wasn't anything telling us from the data not to change. I think when we look at CoSIDA as College Sports Information Directors of America, it was the term is dated, and it seemed like we're heading that way. We'll bring back David, and David, you're working, with us. How do you work with a group when you go through that naming process, and once you got involved, and what was your initial thoughts when CoSIDA approached you to be a part of this?
Well, I'll start with the answering the last question first. It was a sense of honor. I mean, Beau called us and said, "Hey, we'd like you to put a proposal together on getting in on this," and said, "Where do we sign up?" I mean, this is a great brand. This is arguably, to your point, Sam, dated in the sense of you just got to be careful. You just got to can't be yesterday's news. You want to stay relevant, reflective of where you've come from, but relevant. So we were certainly excited to put a proposal together. And then once we got past our excitement about that, we had to kind of get down to work and put together an overall look at this is how we handle it. And it was, I think for us, you wanted to know about our process. You want to know about where do you start, because Jennifer had provided data points. Tripp had provided data in his interviews. So how do you aggregate all that together, bring that all together to come out the other side with a successful outcome? And the answer is process. And we have a strategic and collaborative process that has fared extremely well under some difficult challenges with schools, conferences, name changes, et cetera, that we feel we were confident in this strategic and collaborative process that we had, that we would be able to help the organization. It starts with, and Joe was allowed to laugh as if he's never heard me say this before, but it starts with a simple document that takes a long time, much in the same way that Jennifer fusses over the words that go into a question, because that's important. We fuss over something called a strategy statement and creative brief, essentially our roadmap. And I will say always to clients that if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Mm-hmm. And that's really what this was about. So in putting that creative brief together, and then the second part of it is the collaboration. Beau mentioned who he brought into the process in working groups, put us out there in front of large stakeholder groups of various ilks, from members to leaders to all the way across the board, and that gave us great information. Beau or Sam, you alluded to honesty and bluntness, blunt like a hammer, you know, but that's good. Mm-hmm. That's good because we don't want any surprises at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And it was through all of this, and this is where surveys and research can really help. And as Jennifer says, it's not what the numbers end up being. It's what's the messaging in all of this. So we always said to Beau, we always said to the working group, this is about voice. We want voice. We want to hear. Mm-hmm. This is not vote. Mm-hmm. This is voice. Mm-hmm. The vote's going to come. The vote's going to come, and you're going to have the vote. But this is voice first and not vote. Because here's what happens. And I'll tell. Do I have a chance to tell a quick story?
Yes, we're good.
And this has happened to, I hope not too many times, to Tripp and to Jennifer. But we were doing what we call a listening session. It's not a focus group because Jennifer, if I call it a focus group, she'll slap me because it's not really a focus group. But we're doing a listening session at a unnamed client, and a student athlete in the focus group immediately in the group after we show some ideas, turns around and hijacks the whole group. And he turns around and he looks back doesn't look at us, looks back at the peers and says, well, I think everybody can agree that we like that one up there, don't we? We all agree we don't want that, do we? Right? And immediately killed the room by basically taking his own vote. And we didn't want any of that in this process, and we still don't until the time comes at the end. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a great point though, because this isn't just a numbers game, right? The numbers are important, but what's really important is the story behind the numbers, and that's where Tripp, the work that you and I did, really made, I think, gave the full story and the full picture, because you really got to hear the substance behind the numbers that we were seeing.
Yeah, and what was fun, and I delivered 36 pages of feedback, and it was enlightening on what I heard. But as I read the report again on the plane, so I'd stepped away from it for a month or two and went back to it, and sometimes within the words you see stuff that you didn't see or think about the first time. One of the most resounding statements that was made was, think about the academic catalog at all of our institutions right now. How are they entitling either the coursework or the major? I want to take a pause here because this still gets me. For the most part right now, colleges throughout the country are no longer teaching journalism. They're teaching communications. Now, I gave you a hard time about piddling with the words.
I know you did. I still like you, though.
But we really just met. But the difference, right, the magnitude between journalism and communications, and you've been in this for a while, I mean, that's, to me, stark. That's resounding. It really is.
We talked earlier at the beginning, talking about there was two different paths here. You know, we just discussed here about the name part of it, and which leads into the image. but the other part was membership and how, CoSIDA as an organization can continue to grow and move forward. In the last couple of years, we've seen our membership numbers plateau. We're usually healthy around 3,000. We took a dip last year with the pandemic year, but we bounced back, which was great. But the last 5 to 6 years has been pretty much steady at 3,000. And Beau, we discussed as a board even back in 2019 about how do we address this. We see our profession changing. How can we increase the membership? Maybe who are we not looking or identifying that should be a member? And you brought a great idea to the board at the time, and walk us through the all-in approach.
Yeah, so the all-in membership is just simply, it's a way to be more inclusive of everybody in communications. We know that larger schools typically have a lot of communicators that are not SIDs, and they've told us directly, we want to be part of something,
right?
And there's nothing for us. In many cases, they're sitting in the same office with our members, and this is gaining traction in smaller colleges too. I was just speaking with a member last week who is moving on and thinks that he'll be replaced with a social media driven person at a Division III school. So it's going to affect all divisions at some level. Having these non-SID centric communicators. Now, that doesn't mean we're trying to get rid of the SID. The SID. I mean, as it stands now, we're not telling anybody how they should structure their office
or be labeled,
or the title that they should use, or what their coach should call them, or anything like that. But what we want to do is create that membership that welcomes everybody, that delivers brand messaging on their campus. And so really, that's the goal.
Right.
Now, how do we do that? Well, we're not going to be able to charge a new membership price for, at some schools, we're talking maybe 40 people, right? That's unrealistic. So, we wanted to find a price point, a model where we could bring everybody in. You don't have to manage it throughout the year. If you lose a person, if you gain a person throughout the year, you just pay once at the beginning of the year. You pay one price, you get unlimited members. We think that allows you to bring in your students, your graduate assistants, your interns, maybe your athletic director. There's a lot of former SIDs that are athletic directors. You can include anybody you want, and you just pay once, and then you're done. And we think it's going to be much simpler, and certainly more inclusive, and it's going to expand our membership.
Right, and I really want to drive home too the point of the all-in membership working for even myself. I'm a one-person shop at the Division III level. In the past, I've only bought one membership, but now the opportunity to buy an all-in membership and include my student athletes who are my workers, to include my GA interns, we're exposing our organization to a younger generation at an earlier age in their development. So hopefully they'll want to become an athletic communicator and be a part of our organization moving forward. And Tripp, you had the opportunity to talk to some of these creatives, and what was some of the honest feedback that you heard from them?
Blunt like a hammer, right?
Right.
There are places where people said we work really well together, creatives and SIDs. Other places, people were telling me that the creatives are somewhat in a silo because they're so protective of their creative work that they don't want to share it with other people. Mm-hmm. You have, Power Fives that have multiple people, as you've indicated. Then you have smaller shops in which somebody wears the same hat. I think what this process has done is it's allowed the association to listen to the universe. Evolution is coming. To Beau's point, in 2019, we can't keep nickel and diming people on the membership rate. To what started back in the second quarter last year in terms of the perception and what the brand is, you listened and you participated to get to that point to where new is coming. And it's new that I think is really going to really help those creatives not be as blunt as a hammer, to want to fold in. They said we need a place. You already said it. So who's going to go get it? Can NACMA go get them? Can NACTA? No. CoSIDA needs to go get them, right? So have a safe place, have a safe harbor for people to come tie their boat to.
And it really came back to the board, too, as far as if we don't, address this now, it would be a missed opportunity for all, for communications moving forward, as far as a place for everybody, as Beau mentioned, is trying to be as inclusive as possible. And David, circling back to you, when we're talking about, the name and logo and image and that whole process, when you hear all this feedback, how does that play a role with you and going back to, all right, you have a blank slate. How do you go from here?
The where we take that, once we have all of that, I would argue, Sam, that we really don't have a blank slate because we have that information. We've taken it into this document, this roadmap. So it's a blank slate, but it's been informed by this roadmap and by this document, so that it isn't a case of, well, I'll know when I see it. Pin a bunch of names up on the wall. So just to get a little deeper dive. So out of that creative brief, there was sort of the key thought, and we worked at developing, well, where could that and what CoSIDA aspires to be, what it wants to be looking ahead, where does that take it? What are those buckets of creative consideration? And there were some 5 or 6 different areas where we said, okay, well, this is a bucket that sort of stays to the athletics component. This is the bucket that stays to the communications part. This is a bucket that is more aspirational and way out there. Because in that, if you don't do that exploration, then you don't know where we have to find, as Joe says, we have to find the edges. We have to find how far we can go. And if we come back to the middle, we've come back to the middle, but we've done it with the knowledge that we were out there on the edges. And I don't know, Beau, did we get out on the edges?
We were way on the edges. And we got so far out on the edges that we got some really great looks when we were on those Zoom calls. But I think that is an important point, is that we have explored pretty much everything I think anyone in this room could think of. I mean, we came up with some pretty unique stuff and some pretty creative, I called them brand names. There's a lot of different tacks we could go down in terms of creative names or new acronyms or things like that. But David and Joe pushed us as far as we could on that front.
It's a lot like, but it's a lot like how you feel, and when you're trying on a jacket or a coat or a pair of shoes, it just doesn't feel like me. It doesn't feel like me. So we're at the Nordstrom's, we're the people helping you at Nordstrom, saying, well, really, you're looking for shoes, try these shoes out. But once you put them on and try them on, that doesn't feel like you, even though they can look great, but it doesn't feel like you.
Yeah, there was that moment where we were sharing emails and concepts, and you get right over the mouse to open up the file, and it feels like it takes 20 minutes for it to open up. And then when it pops up, you have this moment of, okay, digestion. And it's a bad analogy with shoes, but digestion in shoes, does it fit, does it not?
Yeah.
And so to Beau's point, we went Bezos, right? We went up, we looked around, came back down. And as Sam continues to walk us towards the final, remember questions on the app?
Yes.
And then Travis, our good friend, will have a microphone.
We have some. Plenty.
Let me just add as Beau just checks our questions here. We understood, too, this whole process wasn't going to be a complete reveal and a big bang for everybody here without other people getting honest feedback and also the membership getting having to vote on this because it's in our Constitution. Beau, walk us through this process as far as what is the next steps when we come to a name change, trademark, membership vote, and sharing that with
Right.
our membership here.
Yeah, so we've been dancing around the words that we think are important for our name for a while, and so we're still finalizing that. We do have a recommendation from the board, but once we do feel completely confident, then we'll complete our trademark search. David and Joe help us with that, and legal type things. And then following that, it will be announced publicly for 21 days through our normal CoSIDA channels. Once that comes to a conclusion, it will be an online membership vote. And Jeff Hodges could help me, but we have constitutional procedures. But yeah, this name will be approved by the membership. And then we will really dig into the accompanying logo that would go with it. I think Joe would probably beat us over the head if we asked him to develop a logo on a name that was not approved yet. So that is our next steps, is to finish that trademark search, to have that 21-day public notice, and then the membership vote. And then we just keep moving forward with Joe and David.
And I think ideally we wanted to come to Las Vegas and have this new name and everything ready to go. But as we found out, getting honest feedback and going back to the drawing board sometimes, it took a little more additional time. But I think at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure we did this right. And I think the membership could be proud about how this process has played out, as you have heard so far this morning. David, circling back before we open it up to questions, some of the names words that we kept on throwing out, there's a lot of the same, words that we heard from you and then also from our advisory council. Can you maybe shine a little light as far as some of those key phrases or words that we kept on going back to?
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion around communicators, creators, but does that, to Tripp's point, aren't we all creative? I ask that rhetorically, because I think part of this entire idea of what Tripp alluded to, the creatives not wanting to sort of share or whatever. I think everybody is creative. And I think that creative part, that collaborative part, everybody's a communicator. So those were the kinds then it was around sports, athletics, college, collegiate. So those were we're getting down to similar to Jennifer's challenges. The words are important. And then put that in a way, put that together in a presentation that everybody can be proud of. And that there's some meat on the bone. There's something behind that. The name all by itself, the logo all by itself, without any substance, is not going to provide any value.
And I think also with our feedback from Jennifer and Tripp too is, trying to keep it concise and something strong enough that can stand on its own. I think is important.
A lot of people ask, let's not have it be 5 or 6 words moving forward, and not really understanding how that short form matches up to those 5 or 6 words.
Right. So, as you heard so far from David, some of the key words, and those were the every time that we went through this version of different names, different ideas, it came back to college, collegiate, sports, athletics, communicators.
Well, it was almost like it was almost like those word bubbles, Yeah. It's like, if how many times do we hear the mention of communications or communicators? Well, that bubble would get bigger.
Communicators, as I did the word count on the plane coming down in the report, dozens of times a variation of that word showed up.
Yeah, and we do the same in the anecdotal comments in the survey also, and it was all the same.
So I think as a board, we came into Las Vegas with one idea, but then having the opportunity to be face-to-face and talk through this whole process. We spent hours on this earlier this week on Friday, and we really came down to, and what the board recommends is college sports communicators as us moving forward. And I think we landed on that and felt confident about where we were with that and how that could be inclusive to a future membership.
Yeah, the sports analogy, pick the sport, layup, home run, teed up. It works. It's concise, and hopefully through the process it plays itself out.
Mm-hmm. Katie Mucci said something when we were in one of our meetings, and I think it's, look, none of us want change at this point, right? I know after the last 2.5 years, we're all changed out at this point. Decision fatigue is real, burnout is real. We just did a study on burnout at Athlete Viewpoint, and that was not surprising, but also sad. So nobody wants change. The thing that I thought was really important about the survey and about the conversations was that it's recognized that change is needed. And that there's a difference. You cannot want it, but also recognize that it's time for it to happen, either because the profession has changed, the duties have changed, athletics has changed as a whole. Right. And so then you take that a step further. One of our favorite sayings is, if change needs to happen eventually, then change should happen now. And I really think that was reinforced also through all of this process.
And a couple points on that, too, of the college sports communicators. It still pays homage to our history of college sports, and then the communicators as far as being more inclusive for future members. But also Losing America, we got feedback from our neighbors from the north and CoSIDA. Losing that term was helpful. So I think that makes us more current. We have to get current first before we get modern, and I think that was a good step.
So before Beau's phone starts to smoke, because I think I see questions coming in, don't forget Travis to my right, your left, is ready with a microphone. Two things before we get to Beau, and it comes to the impression. When Google first came out as a thing, how many people said, Google? What is that? It's part of the lexicon now, right? It's both a noun and a verb. And then Joe, in one of our calls, and I'm paraphrasing, Joe said, brand equity is not established in one day. And I think that's a lot to be said for this process as well. So
yeah, that's a perfect segue. So, this is the main thing we have not covered yet, which it's rising right to the top, is a new name and logo is great, but what else are we going to do?
Absolutely.
It's not enough just to put a new picture and name out there.
I heard people tell me, yes, that's going to be great to have that new presentation, but how do you back it up with programming? One of the challenges for the staff is going to be, in an environment like this, programming for the membership that is now as robust as All In.
And we identified that too as a board early on, last fall about this, as far as if we're trying to bring in a different group of members as part of us, what can we offer to them as far as a benefit? And you can see on the screen, trying to be more, resources and to support them, professional development, awards. That was one thing we heard back from creatives was recognition. And I think, CoSIDA now and moving forward, we can offer that as a professional development organization.
Yeah, so before Beau tees up another question, if you have a question in the room, and I'm sorry for shielding the lights, if you would raise your hand, and Travis will come find you. And if you do have a question, your name and the school that you're affiliated with would be huge for us to be able to answer.
I would also like to add something to the last question, which is moving forward, we're going to lean on what people are telling us. So these questions were in the survey, and the answers we got are that people want more. They want more networking. They want more recognition. They want more that technical
development.
How-to. So we're going to focus on professional development. We're going to focus on recognition, and we're going to recognize that one size is not going to fit all. That's part of that poker chip that we were passing out at the desk. Is we need you to fill out your member profile. So we're not spamming people with information that they don't want. So we're making efforts to be more targeted and more specific to. We're going to have different member types. So that listening to our members and providing what you're asking for is going to be crucial.
Right.
So not seeing a question from the room, do you have anything else that is bubbling up? Do we have one?
We have a lot.
I tell you what, Beau, hold on. If you would, please stand so that we might be able to see you. And if you want to come on stage, you can.
With Elvis and Frank.
Frank, good memory. That's where we started.
And Trip.
Travis, all the way. So it's going to be our left, your right.
There we go.
And please, of the panelists, whoever your question is towards, if you would address that person.
Paul Smith from Texas Women's, and really the question is for anybody on the panel who feels inclined to answer. So for those of us who are currently in the divisional leadership and leveraging the new all-in membership model, I see some opportunities for us to kind of start building towards this now. But what are some things we can do as we try to fold more people into the organization? I mean, beginning when we start with our divisional meetings this week and when we go back to our campuses as we're looking to expand, what are some things we can do to increase buy-in from other areas in our departments for you?
Like Sam or Beau, if you guys.
Yeah, no, Paul, thanks for that question. I appreciate that. And I do think it's important from a divisional level, and our divisional leaders, a lot of them are in this room, to help us with the buy-in on the all-in approach. I know we mentioned before, you can see the slide up on the screen as far as the membership pricing, and we still have that one member option, but we would really challenge maybe the one-person shops or smaller shops to go for the all-in approach. It might be a little more than you paid in the past, but this will be, again, the opportunity to get more people in this organization, but also get more people within your office an opportunity to have professional development.
Can I just say something, too, to that question? Your question typifies everything that I have found from the outside working with CoSIDA, and that is that, look, I send out a lot of surveys, and we have to work really hard to get responses to some of those surveys. CoSIDA members show up every time they've been asked. You showed up with the salary survey, you showed up in the brand survey. Almost 1,000 people took the survey for this. And, no offense to you, Beau, but we didn't work that hard. We just asked you once or twice to take it. We weren't, stalking you in your email 6 times with reminders and all of those things.
$100 incentives.
Right. No, no fabulous prizes like all of those other tricks that we use.
But it showed how important this subject is to them.
How important it is and how invested you all are. And for you to stand up and say, how can we help?
Yes.
That is the secret to success right there. So I just had to say that because we work with a lot of different professional associations, organizations, colleges and universities.
Sam, if I could add
Sure.
to that idea and the question of how you can help, I think that that is membership in CoSIDA and all-in membership in CoSIDA is an opportunity, is a benefit that you can put out to aspiring talent that's on your campuses that wants to come and work.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to me, looking from the outside in, is a great, but find out who your talented people are. Give them this opportunity to share with peers who are out there and get this learning. You just don't know who's out there.
Right.
And I think that's the great opportunity. Bring in more people. Into
Opportunity again.
Yeah. Travis has another question straight up the aisle. If you would please stand up, school and affiliate or name and affiliation.
Rickson Lane, Eastern Kentucky University. When you talk about trying to get creative teams involved with the organization, what are some of the selling points for those of us who have them, whether they're full-time or student, that we can go back to our campuses and say, hey, this is why we need you to be a part of this organization, other than just, not having a place to go and now you do. Right. What's some of those programming ideas that we can use to sell them on becoming part of what we're doing here?
Yeah, I'll provide a baseline and then please follow in. To me, it comes down to culture. What type of environment do you have in your office that allows you then some of those talking points, some of the things that you might be able to do to build into getting people involved in assessing what your culture is probably the best foundational start that you could have.
Yeah, Rickson, thanks for that question. I appreciate it. Again, I think one of the things that we heard back from our surveys too was, some of the creatives being siloed. And I know a lot of people at the Division I level struggle with some of the creatives being, in a sports-specific office. But this is, hopefully too, an olive branch to help break down those walls or get those people out of the silos and be a part of something And so those people don't feel like their work goes unrecognized and, they're not part of a team. The athletic communications office feels like, well, the creatives, on this side is not working with us. I think hopefully this will be an opportunity for us to come together.
And then we've got another one on the right-hand side towards the sound pit.
Alex Jewell from Eastern Michigan. With this rebranding, I think it wonderfully, inevitably opens it up to more membership. Specifically, though, it is able to tie in marketing teams or administrators on campus very easily. But for those of us that are in the media relations or SID role that have strategic roles at our university or have aspirations to be taking that next step into an administrative type of field, what is the organization going to do to help push our membership or our ability to reach into a NACTA or to a NACMA to get benefits from that? Because we're opening this up for the other organizations to benefit into our field very easily.
No, Alex, thanks for that question. I think, one of the first things is we're here. We're here with NACTA. In the past, CoSIDA was always siloed or on its own, and I think it was important for us as an organization many years ago to be here, to be visible. We've seen our growth with NACTA, with NACMA, partnering with different presentations here every year at the convention has been instrumental. And Tripp, I think you heard from some of the ADs about how maybe CoSIDA over the last couple of years has increased that, and we've seen more opportunities for athletic communicators to rise up to become senior admin leaders, and some of them becoming athletic directors.
Yeah, and if you follow the stats alone, because we like stats, in a board meeting I was in yesterday, there are 1,000 roughly CoSIDA members that are here this week. As an example, there are 411 NACMA members that are registered. So the presence alone, but it also is it's the building of the bridge. It's going across campus. It's going into the office and standing in somebody's doorway to say, this is what we're about. This is our mission. This is, can you come with me? Can I come with you on the journey? I think what we've learned through the pandemic is we've been a little bit more empathetic. I think we've been a little bit more collaborative because we've had to be. And maybe this is yet another jumping off point to where you could go to Scott in the AD chair and say, here's my vision. Let's see if we can pull this off. And go talk to the football social media person, because we got like 20 social media directors on campus anyway right now. How is it with culture that you might be able to wrap that all back through? It's not going to be a one answer fits everybody, but if you break down the individual scenarios in your campus, you might be able to figure it out.
Yeah, and Alex, to the point too, like CoSIDA is the largest affiliate outside of NACTA here, and this whole all-in membership approach will help strengthen us in numbers. Mm-hmm. I know we're coming up on time, so we have time for one more question.
Yeah, the questions that are bubbling up to the top apply to this same thing we're talking about in terms of, I think what we're looking for is more respect is the theme here, and how is this rebrand going to help us change the perception of who we are?
Well, I could try and jump in on that. I think it is, as I said before, the name and the identity are one thing. Underneath all of that, it's not going to come solely. That respect is solely not going to come from a new name and a new logo. I think it has to be almost, from a little bit from the ground up, a little bit of finding a way in programming, and this is where now I'm. Joe, we could be fired here in about 10 minutes here, but but feet to the fire to our clients of really developing that programming we've talked about. How do you break down to Tripp's question? How do you break down that sort of barrier or missing between a traditional creative spot and a traditional information spot?
Yeah, you now have an arrow in your quiver. You can walk into somebody's office and say, did you hear the news? Mm-hmm. This is now a thing. It's a new thing. And you've got a conversation started that you haven't had in the last 35 or 40 years. So when you hear about respect, when you hear about breaking down walls, again, you have your starter. And let that be the inspiration that starts the conversation.
And I think some of that miss between the traditional roles here,
right?
Often, and the lack of respect often comes down to culture, and often comes down to the type of work process that happens in there. And this is an ad for our session this afternoon at 3:30 in this room, but we're going to be talking about brand and content. But behind that is traditional work methods that Joe and I have employed outside of the college space in advertising agencies, in large client places, where there is process for at a high level an overall plan, and then down to the day-to-day that generates more of that respect that everybody's looking for.
Mm-hmm. And just to wrap things up here as we move forward, talking about respect, one of the things we kept on hearing too was, sports information directors, you guys are the stats people, and we're more than that. We are the communicators. We are creating content and stuff. And Jennifer, just as far as those words, we talk about words really mean something. Changing the, us as an organization from sports information directors to sports and college sports communicators, it makes us more current.
Makes you more current, and I think the other piece is that, this is a real opportunity for people in this room to step into leadership in their organizations in ways maybe that they haven't. And I think the data that we received from ADs and conference commissioners, people who are running, departments, the top of the pyramid, there's reactivity and there's proactivity, right? Your phone always rings when there's a reactive need to the phone ringing, right? So that you can tell that story in a way that doesn't get people in trouble. But this is the proactive opportunity that exists to just step in as a leader in your department and highlight the changes that you heard about here, and talk about how can you help your department leverage those at the table to really help propel your organization in new and different ways, and meaning your athletic organization. And that's all tied to, the professional association that you're part of. And the resources, I truly believe the resources will be there for you. They may not know the laundry list yet of what those are, but Beau knows. Tripp and I both challenged that very early on. Mm-hmm. That if you're gonna go do it, you got to go all the way, and you have to be as advertised, and that will come along with all of this, and it'll provide you with some great opportunities for growth and development.
I know there's a lot more questions, and we have a lot more time throughout the convention. This whole panel is going to be downstairs in the CoSIDA exhibit hall immediately after this session to answer questions. So we're happy to talk to anybody this week. Also reach out to our executive board, and they'll be happy to answer questions as well as we move forward. Please fill out the surveys that are in the app, but we really appreciate your time. And it's my honor now, too, to bring forward our new CoSIDA Executive Director, Eric Christensen.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to CoSIDA. I'm really honored to stand here today and serve and help lead this organization moving forward, particularly at this time. Let's thank our panel again. They did a great job this morning. I'd like to share just a couple of thoughts from someone who's been a part of this process in a couple of different roles now. So full disclosure, I was part of the group that Tripp talked to early when I was still in my role at the NCAA, and we just had a wonderful, great conversation. I was part of the advisory group as well, and can attest that there were just really intelligent, robust conversations that were happening at that time. And now in my new role as well, and interacting with the board. And what I want to kind of share with all of you as we kind of close this part of the session this morning is just how strong this process has been. I think you heard that loud and clear here. I've been fortunate to be a part of these kind of processes for some pretty iconic brands. This is as strong as I have seen. Data-driven, inclusive, really focused on success, right, and how to move forward there. So you should all really feel strongly about the due diligence that has gone into this process. It has been strong, and as impressive as I have ever seen in my career. So a couple things then that I'd like to just kind of leave with you as we go forward. And as Sam mentioned, we'll be downstairs right after this. We're around this whole time. Please come and find us. We want to hear your feedback. We really feel that this is a transformative time for us. So as I think about this moving forward, there's really three key stakeholder groups for us to keep in mind. And this is something I've been talking about with others for a while. One is current membership, right? As has been mentioned, there is a tremendous amount of brand equity in this organization, and we should all feel really good about that. And so that is a really key, important stakeholder group. The second, of course, are those prospective members. Someone's calling for some more feedback, I guess. Those prospective members, those that we would like to bring into the fold, they're already working in athletics communications in many ways, and we want to attract them to the work. And then beyond that, that third stakeholder group then is college sports leadership, ADs, commissioners, presidents, chancellors. We need to reach them as well, and we need to demonstrate to them that we are a forward-looking, forward-leaning, progressive organization, and we are, and we're taking those steps. So to close out my portion here, and then we'll keep going. The question that keeps coming back in my mind, and that I want to pose to all of you as well, that I think really helps organize my thoughts and it helps in this process, is what unites us, right? If you're working in a more traditional type of role, if you're employing a lot of the new tools that are out there today, what unites us are two main things, right? We are telling the story of the student athlete. There's a lot of questions about that right now. Let's be really honest about that, right? I've faced those questions a lot in the course of my career, telling the story of the student athlete, and then providing solutions for college sports, right? College sports needs this organization. It needs this organization to continue to evolve and grow and be as strong as it can be, continue to bring in others into it, and continue to lead for our institutions and ultimately for our student athletes. So thank you for the opportunity to be in front of you for a couple minutes today. I look forward to saying hi to all of you this week while we're here. I would now like to invite to the stage as we kind of wrap up our program this morning with some important recognition. So hang in there. We're not quite done yet. Please join me in welcoming CoSIDA Third Vice President, Senior Associate Athletics Director at the University of Arkansas, Kevin Traynor.
Good morning, everyone. And as this program has displayed, we've had tremendous leadership. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Doug Vance. When you go into a change of this type to position for the future, certainly you saw the great leadership we've had under Doug and the great leadership that we will have under Eric. So, Doug, thank you for your leadership in bringing us to this point. One of the outstanding things that our organization did this year, we debuted a program that provided members with an opportunity to learn and grow through professional development sessions. The program was planned as part of our CoSIDA's Racial and Social Justice Initiative. And at this time, I would like to ask the members of the Diversity and Inclusion Fellowship to gather over here to the right of the stage. And we are going to acknowledge them, and helping us with that recognition is our initiative chair and good friend Denise Thompson. CoSIDA's partnership with the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics has resulted in a program to help educate CoSIDA members on diversity and inclusion issues within college sports and the athletics communications profession. The comprehensive educational series for select members of CoSIDA is designed to provide insights into diversity and inclusion issues, values, and opportunities for communication professionals in college sports. The program encourages a greater understanding of how those in athletic communications offices at all levels become effective champions for diversity and inclusion in college athletics. Our entire class, as you can see, is listed on the screen, but for those in attendance, when I call your name, please come to the stage and Denise will give you a certificate for the completion of the program. And again, if you will hold your applause until the end, we'll give them a roaring ovation at the end. From TCU, Mark Cohen. From the Missouri Valley Conference, Ryan Davis. From Francis Marion, Michael Hawkins. From Texas A&M, Shelby Heald. From Northern Arizona, Stacen Asobi. From DePaul, Ashley Jones. From Holy Cross, Sarah Kirkpatrick. From Hampton, Shaylin Moore. From Brown, Kelvin Kaylees. From the Southwestern Athletic Conference, Andrew Roberts. From Richmond, Bridget Robles. From Delaware, Nicole Sasochum. And from the Atlantic Coast Conference, Justin Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you the 2022 Diversity and Inclusion Fellows. Let's give them a hand. Thank you all. Thank you. Congratulations. Well, it's been a wonderful session today, and we've talked about the past of our organization, the strength of this organization, and the future. And again, as Sam and both Eric pointed out, members of our panel, as well as Eric, will be in the exhibit hall at the CoSIDA booth after this session to get more in detail with you and tell you more about it in the exhibit hall. Again, a reminder, if you will take the survey, give us some feedback not only on this session, but the other sessions. It continues to be a great week. We appreciate you being here and hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you for attending.